The January 16th meeting postponed until January 22nd meeting of the planning board will come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Doreen, will you please call the roll?
Rick Meinking,
Here.
Roger Bailey,
Here.
James Hebert,
Here.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Here.
Noah Perlet,
Here.
and Bennett Flanders.
Here.
In the absence of Jen Ladd, Noah Perlet, our first alternate, will be a voting member tonight. Next item on the agenda, approval of the minutes, December 11th, 2023. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
I think I heard Noah first. Are there any corrections, emendations, changes, problems? Thorough as usual. Thank you, Doreen. Please call the roll.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes,
and Noah Perlet.
Yes.
thank you. Some of you might have noticed that in the original notice of this meeting, Marsh Bend had submitted an application, and it is not on today's agenda. They have withdrawn, temporarily tabled their application. So if there is anyone here or out in the audience, the thousands that usually turn into us, that was here to look at, hear from Marsh Bend, it will be in a future meeting. Next on the agenda, item 4.01, Joseph Christopher and Katie Treem request a zoning map amendment to rezone 42 Two Rod Road from the rural farming, RF, to residential 2, R2 zoning district. The property is further identified as Assessor's Map R50, Lot 2. For the town, Eric?
I'll actually turn over to Autumn.
I'm actually going to do this one. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request that came into us for 42 Two Rod Road from RF to R2, essentially to take advantage of the large lot and the existing 2 curb cuts on the property. So as it is right now, there is a home and then there is another curb cut that has a sort of a garage studio structure. The applicant purchased the property and they wish to demolish the secondary structure and to construct an additional home. And they intend to rehab the existing home. So the request is for the zoning, which would allow the reduction in lot frontage. They have a little bit over 200 feet now. For the R2 zone, they would only need 100 feet of frontage. So it would allow them to have the appropriate lot size. In looking at this against our existing zoning, you can see that it is the edge of the RF zone and the R2 zone does seem appropriate. The comprehensive plan, this is also the edge of the appropriate zoning location. So with that, staff is recommending approval and I am happy to answer any questions you have. And the applicant is also here this evening.
Thank you. Again, as a reminder, this is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public here who would like to make a comment? Okay, excuse me, if you could just approach the podium. I apologize for not providing the protocol earlier. Approach the podium, give me your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Katie Treem. I currently reside at 37 Old Neck Road in Scarborough. I am the applicant of this. And I just wanted to add in that the second structure, the roof is currently collapsed of it. So that is the reason we are going to demolish it anyway. So I just wanted to add that in. It's not it's not able to be rehabbed.
Thank you. I'll turn this, is there anyone else? Nobody online? Anybody?
Sorry.
All right, Chair recognizes Julie Bolton.
Hi, yes, I was just looking to see,
Oh,
I saw the divider on the map. But where exactly would the house be placed? Where,
All right,
It might
Julie, we're
be,
gonna try, but there's a lot of static on the line.
Is it on her end?
um, I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Julie, 1 second, please.
Oh, you know what? I can write in the chat.
Julie, I'm sorry.
Are you able to hear me?
The challenges.
Julie, what I'm going to do is have board comments while we're trying to see if this technology is going to work. I'm not even sure that you can necessarily hear me. But we will come back to you when the technology allows us. Members of the board.
Do you want to just move the agenda item and see
Well,
if we can rectify it and just,
Let's see if we can have board comments and questions, and if the technology then is not, I don't know, let me see what happens with the technology. So
yeah,
let's
it'd be nice to hear public comment before before it goes to the board, just to get a sense of what the public's saying.
Okay, there is one member of the public online who would like to comment. Let us, with the approval of the board, and I'm just going to look for head nodding, I'm going to delay this part of the agenda
Yeah.
and move it to, let's say, after 4.04. I'm also concerned that what might happen is we're going to have problems with the technology in some of the other,
Oh,
some of the other sections, some of the other applicants. Okay, let's, hearing no objections, I'm going to move this item to after 4.04 and move to item 4.02. Jelinus HVAC is requesting site plan amendment review for 20 additional parking spaces adjacent to the existing business at 224 Gorham Road, Assessors Map R38, Lot 26 for the town.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Galinas has returned to the planning board after its October 10th site plan review. The proposal remains for a 20-space parking expansion adjacent to the existing building. During the October review, the board requested more information on treatment of stormwater runoff as well as additional lighting detail. At this time, staff doesn't have any other comments. All those have been addressed and we recommend approval of the site plan. A draft motion has been provided for the board's consideration with this in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything further?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Nancy St. Clair. I'm with St. Clair Associates. We're here tonight to answer any questions that you folks have, but we don't have anything further to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Comments from the board. Rick,
yeah,
excuse me, wait a minute. Public hearing.
Oh, you're right. we go
Is
again.
there any member of the public in the room that would like to comment on this application? I hesitate to ask, is there any member of the public online?
With their hand up.
All right, there's seeing that there are no members of the public. Thank you very much. Wanting to comment on this at this time, or comment on this, the public opinion is closed. And we move on to members of the board, and I saw Rick Meinking.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I've reviewed the documentation submitted and the areas that were in question, lighting and stormwater management, seem to be addressed. And so therefore, I think this is pretty much ready to go, meets ordinances as I reviewed it and feel comfortable with this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger?
I have no comment.
Very good. Jim?
Yeah, my focus here is on the lighting and if they met all the intent that we've laid out for them. So I have no further comment.
Thank you. Noah?
I'd just like to thank the applicant for very thoughtfully revising their planting schedule and put in a really nice native plant program. So thank you. And no other comment.
Bennett?
I also have no further comment, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And strangely enough, I have no further comment. Other than to express my appreciation for the consultant and the applicant for really working with us and working with the staff to provide us with a complete and very, very acceptable application. I am going to read the draft motion. I move to approve the project titled Gelinas HVAC Services proposed by Justin Zandon as depicted in plan sets prepared by St. Clair Associates dated 12/18/23 with the following findings and conditions. Findings. The project includes construction of 20 additional parking spaces adjacent to the existing business at 224 Gorham Road. The planning board finds that the project meets the requirements of the site plan review and zoning ordinances with the following findings and conditions. So not ready. Conditions: 1, prior to the start of construction, the applicant shall A, schedule a pre-construction meeting via the planning department. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. All plan modifications are to be completed prior to scheduling the pre-construction meeting. B, update the site plan to highlight the location of existing vegetation to be cleared per the Goral Palmer traffic assessment. C, provide the final full plan set to the planning department. This shall include all site and civil plans, landscape plans, lighting plans, and architectural renderings and elevations. D, pay impact fees totaling $6,354.57. Payne Road Zone 1, $298.86. Payne Road Zone 2, $1,754.52. Payne Road Zone 3, $1,497.15. Payne Road Zone 5, $2,049.04. Oak Hill, $755. This shall be reviewed by the planning department. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Rick Meinking. Doreen, you please call the roll.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes,
Noah Perla.
Yes.
project has passed. Thank you very much, folks.
I hope you stay busy.
Item 4.03, not going to work.
Did you want to call my cell phone and I can put my cell phone?
We are Atlantic Commercial Holdings and AR Building basically are all online.
Oh. That's a problem, but we got Drew here for the next one, right? Can you pitch it?
Yes, we do have Drew. We do not have any of his assistants, no problem.
You can always.
All
call
right,
back,
well, Drew is ready for that.
you know.
Therefore, item 4.03, Atlantic Commercial Holdings LLC requests site plan review to construct a 22,000 square foot light industrial and retail building along Innovation Way. The property is further identified as 106 Innovation Way, Assessors Map U53, Lot 4 for the town.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the applicant is requesting site plan approval for a Light industrial and retail building on Innovation Way. It have 2 retail spaces and 10 light industrial spaces inside the building. This was previously reviewed in November by the planning board, where it requested the building be given a closer relationship to the street and that the landscaping for the remaining portion of the lot be clarified. Goral Palmer and the applicant have moved the building 5 feet closer to the street, and a connection to the Innovation District Trail network has been provided, that was shown in one of the exhibits that the applicant submitted. 3 parking spaces have also been removed from the front of the building, in this effort. Staff's 2 main concerns revolve around updated lighting standards and the potential landscaping on the potential second phase of the project. And with these 2 items being minor in nature, a draft motion of approval has been provided to the board for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the applicant.
Thank you. Drew Gagnon with Goral Palmer representing Atlantic Commercial Holdings LLC. I had a presentation, but I won't ask to bring it up with fear of getting kicked off Zoom here. Jessica West was going to be online she's the applicant. And I believe Keith Smith was also going to be online, but that's okay. And I'm just going to verbally walk you through our changes. Eric did a great job. The site plan's up on the screen. My mic might not be on here. My mic on? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So as Eric mentioned, we did slide the building 5 feet closer to Innovation Way and trying to address the standard of trying to engage the building with the street. In doing that, 3 spaces were removed in the bottom left corner of the plan. And we also modified the parking and sidewalk connections to try to get a landscaped island as you're driving up Innovation Way. We feel that that break in the parking there and also removing the 3 spaces on, I'll call it the northerly side of the drive aisle, is helping that building engage with the street a little bit more, in addition to having it a little bit closer to the right of way. In addition to that, we have a sidewalk connection that we're proposing. As you can see down, I'll say plan south and towards the left, that's going to go down to Innovation Way right away up against the curb, and it's going to connect to the crosswalk, which you can see an inset in the top left corner of the screen where there's a crosswalk across Innovation Way, and that's also a trail connection. So I provided a pedestrian connection exhibit in the package that you have, and that showed the blue lines where everything that has pedestrian infrastructure within the Innovation District, and the blue dashed lines were what we are proposing for this project. We've also provided a tip down and future sidewalk connection towards the planned east part of the site. So whenever that's developed, we'll have a through connection there to make sure that this entire lot and development will be connected to the pedestrian infrastructure in the Innovation District. Regarding the landscaping that Eric brought up in the conditions, we're amendable to some sort of sunset provision on if a future phase of the lot isn't developed in a certain amount of time. We can provide some plantings there to help buffer that from the street. But our intention, as we discussed last meeting, is to have a second phase to this programming that would be connected towards that drive aisle. And that's when the rest of the plantings would be planted likely around the future infrastructure. So the idea is to just not have to plant something and remove it later. But in the case that that doesn't happen, we're agreeable to some sort of sunset provision on putting those plantings in. Other updates, we did receive the SLDA amendment for this project, and we have received both our Scarborough Sanitary District and Portland Water District approvals. We're happy to add those additional lighting notes as well onto the plan, still working through getting all the standards aligned with the town and the new ones, but we're happy to do that as part of a condition of approval. So that's all I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions and seeking approval tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. This item is subject to public comment. Is there any person in the room that would like to comment? Do we have anyone online that we can get to? All right, so basically, no public comment from.
They don't have their hands up, so I think.
Okay. Phew. All right, thank you. Public comment is closed. I turn this over to the board. Let's start down at this end. Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What is your, do you have an estimated time frame for developing the adjacent lot? A year, 2 years?
I think that's,
Oh,
yeah, I think that's tough to say. I would say probably your first couple of guesses are closer. But again, I think it's really, market dependent and client driven, so.
I understand. I'm kind of hoping we could, I like that you have a sunset kind of provision as well, and I was wondering if we could come to an agreement on a time frame for that. Would a year be fair to you? 2 years? I don't know. I want to get something written down just so we have,
Certainly, I think 3 years is a good starting point if that's amenable for the board.
anybody okay with that? 3 years? No?
No,
Too long?
And it's too long.
That's kind of what I would guess.
the muttering down at this end is too long.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe I'll let other members comment as well, but I would say, if I was voting, I would say a year would be the top I want to give you for that.
Okay.
For the planning schedule. Otherwise, I do appreciate addressing the sidewalk issues and moving the building a little bit closer and all that, so. I think, otherwise I'm comfortable with this project. So, that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Noah?
I have two questions for you. The first is, and I apologize, I just couldn't quite figure it out from your map. Can you remind us of the width of the access to the hiking trail, the width of that plan?
It's a 5-foot sidewalk we're providing down there.
5-foot sidewalk.
Correct.
Okay, I want to just express my continued frustration with the Downs regarding it being in theory, a multimodal process. In no way is a 5-foot sidewalk wide enough to allow biking and walking and wheelchairs together. It's just not. It's just not in a safe, functional way, period. And I think that's just not appropriate. If, given the Downs, I mean, you go to Downs website and everything is, we're a multimodal community. We're doing all of these things to have all of these things, and everything is just turning out to be, cars and walking, and that's it. That's frustrating. I'll let the other folks, if they have any thoughts, maybe, I don't know if I'm a lone wolf on this, but I'll leave it there. And then I did want to follow up on your conversation about the sunset provisioning. So what is your intention to leave it? What's the state that you'll leave it in?
It'll be what's out there today, which is a cleared flat lot. So we're going to tie into that just along where that alley is. And again, we're not saying we're not going to do plantings. We just didn't want to put them there, then have to move them later. Again, we're amendable to a year too, and starting somewhere. So we're happy to do that for the board. But the intention is to leave it the way it is today and not disturb it along just that right edge. It's not for all the planting, it's just for the right edge along where that right-hand side of the alley is. It's the only location.
So that means that leaving it as it is means it's just open dirt.
Well, we'll vegetate. It's currently not, it's currently stabilized right now, so we'll leave it as is. We're not going to disturb it and not revegetate it.
Stabilized is defined as?
Vegetated with loam and seed.
Okay, that's good enough. That
Sorry, I just wanted to, I have Jessica West on the phone, and she is requesting 12 to 18 months. That would be the time frame that they'd like to hold on for the landscaping.
my concern was that it was not something that was easily erodible. If you have it in some kind of sod and some kind of vegetation type on there that it's not going to all wash away in a huge storm, then that's a different conversation compared to I'm going to leave it in dirt, in construction dirt.
Absolutely. We're going to vegetate it and stabilize it.
That's a reasonable thing to me. Okay. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And for those who could not hear what Autumn had said, she was in contact with the landscape architect, with the applicant. Jessica West, and 12 to 18 months is their thinking. So we haven't, they've offered an option of 12 to 18 months before.
As long as it's in permanent or it's in vegetation, that's fine by me. As long as it's in some cover.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, let's start down, Rex waving his hand.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm fine with 12 to 18 months as a period in which if nothing happens on that adjacent lot, then I would like to have them come before the planning board with a plan that would make it so that it fits within the rest of the land that's associated with this project. One question, Drew, is there an opportunity to do some, and maybe I'm missing it, but some level of landscaping around the dumpster and the transformer that is located on the adjacent lot?
Yeah, certainly. So again, our intention there is with this second phase, I would kind of take care of
Yeah,
that.
but you're not gonna mess with that on a second phase. The transformer is not gonna move, right?
No, but if the utility run lines that go to it, we're plan on sharing that transformer for the future building as well. So just the intent, I'm happy to add that to the location for the 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, what about the dumpster? Because what are you gonna do with the dumpster in 12 to 18 months? Is it gonna
Yeah.
move?
Probably, hopefully not. So
Well, I think the transformer is safe to say that, and chances are, I mean, I'm looking at it from a perspective of, even people that are gonna be your prospective buyers on the adjacent lot, driving down there, they probably want to see, something that looks decent. I'm fine with the 12 to 18 months on the area that could be really impacted with the development of the adjacent lot. But let's take care of the transformer and dumpster. That's my opinion. Other than that, no, I appreciate the changes that you've made in regards to the last time we had spoken. I think generally I'll let my colleague, if there's, I don't really want to get into the lighting. I'll leave that to my colleague. But I think you've done a good job with that as well. Those are my only comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more? Yes.
I do have a comment from Keith Smith, the landscape architect, that there are landscaping elements shown around the transformer and the dumpster. There are trees and screening.
Okay,
So it's
that
covered.
area will
Yes, sir.
be manicured to
Yes,
our
per
standards.
Keith.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sooner than 18 months, right?
That will be done with the first development.
yeah, I'm looking at it right here, actually, on our
Yes.
landscaping plan. So
Okay.
thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Roger?
I'm basically satisfied that you've done everything we've asked you to do. And I have no problem with the 12 to 18 months to satisfy the board's desire to have some landscape. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim?
Question on the light poles. Are they gonna be mounted at grade, or is there gonna be any kind of concrete base with them? I'm thinking like protection against a plow or somebody driving off the road.
Yeah, we will have some exposed concrete there, part of the foundation, correct?
Okay. And so I guess my follow-up on that, is that going to be part of the overall height of the fixtures? So, and we have mounting heights, like a fixture S2, the mounting height of that is 12 and 14 feet. Let's make sure that the concrete base is factored into that, so we don't have like a 2-foot concrete base and then a 12 or 14-foot fixture on top of that. Then we're looking at like a 16 or an 18-foot fixture, if you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah, that goes from existing grades, so we'll be sure to clarify that.
Cool. Yeah, so that'd be my just clarification that any concrete base factors into the overall height of the light fixture. I'm in favor of, if we're gonna put a number on it, let's just say 12 months. I'd love to see as much, if all the development that's going on and construction work that's going on there. Let's not hold it back to delay it any further. Let's make it 12 months is my opinion. And with respect to the sidewalks, my thought would be is I'd like to see the sidewalks a little wider just to facilitate some two-way traffic. You're gonna have people coming in both directions. As Noah pointed out, you may have somebody in a wheelchair or somebody that might be hauling some kind of box or container or a bicycle with a cart, and 5 feet, just looking at myself, doesn't really seem like that wide of any kind of pedestrian access. So I would like to see that widened. I don't know what the next sort of standardized width would be, if that's 8 feet, or if that's wider, or if it's shorter or less rather. I guess I would yield to better experience on this board than me for that. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have, the conundrum that I'm dealing with right now is 12 to 18 months from what? From the start of construction, from the end of construction. You don't want to be putting landscaping in while you're still building the building. So we need to be just a little clearer. And it seems to me if they can get it in sooner than 12 months, we don't want to say, well, you have to get it in between 12 and 18 months
Yeah,
from something. So that putting an outside time limit on it makes sense to me. But again, I go back to from the start of construction, from 50% of the building done. Perhaps
typically,
that-
don't we, Madam Chair, they get an occupancy certificate? That's usually a big milestone in a lot, in a construction project. And I would be comfortable with saying 12 to 18 months from the date of occupancy certificate.
Autumn, how is landscaping, this is a silly question, I guess, because not one I've thought of, how is landscaping handled in terms of when we expect it done? What stage of the construction?
It's typically done with the construction of the building, or if it's off-season, where we require a performance guarantee for what has not been installed. And then we hold that money until it's been installed. So the goal of this is to have landscaping for the remainder of the site, correct? If they do not construct on it. So any sort of landscaping would have to come back with an amended site plan, if you will, at least a staff level review. And so what you could do is use the certificate of occupancy as your starting point. So at least within 12 months of the CO for the first building, you've submit, if no additional site plan work has been done, you can turn in your amended site plan to add landscaping, and it needs to be installed within 18 months. That's one way you could skin it, so that they have that 6 month, you know that you're gonna at least have something installed within 18 months of their CO, which is probably about 12 months out. But that also gives them some time, because ideally we encourage them to develop on the remainder of the site, and you would see an amended site plan with that as well. So that might be one way to do it.
Let me ask if that's process is acceptable before Eric tries to write it out into the draft motion. And I tried to read his handwriting into the draft motion. Ben?
Madam Chair, I think that's fine for me.
No, you'll,
I was just in my head, just doing some of the planting math on that. So if they came to approval in October, 6 months would get them, they'd have to have it done by April. Is that math correct?
Mhm.
Which I think for a lot of plantings is impossible. So maybe it needs to be that the plan needs to be approved in 9 months and they have 18 months for the planting.
I don't think, I don't think they'll have their CO and.
I'm saying from the CO, from the CO, right? I'm trying to, frankly, this is really for the developer to be able to have a
Adequate.
true planting window in Maine. I mean, that,
Right.
because we can't tell them to plant in December or January. That's not feasible.
that all of this sounds reasonable to me, but of course, the devil is in the details, so I'm going to ask Eric if he understands.
So right now I have provision, prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall address planning board comments as discussed, including provision of a vegetation plan for the vacant part of the lot. This shall state, I was gonna say something to the effect of landscaping shall be installed within 18 months of, 12 months of the CO?
No.
I might have misunderstood that.
So it would be a condition that would say your other things, but a condition of approval from CO. So prior to receiving, you'd have to do it prior to receiving your CO. You'd have to give us the landscape plan, or we don't have anything to hold you against. That's a weird one too.
I mean, you can give us a plan, right? It doesn't mean you have to plan it at that particular time. You get the CO. If you don't sell the lot and develop it within 12 months of that CO, then planning staff needs to see the plan.
Can I ask you what you're hoping to see if the rest of the site doesn't develop? What your intent is for the landscaping plan? Are you wanting, because as they're going to maintain it, as Noah's comment was, he was concerned with it being stabilized, it will be stabilized, it will be basically just like sod, and it'll look like a lawn that's mowed with the rest of their site. What is the intention of the ultimate outcome if they don't develop a building on that site in 5 years? What would you like the rest of it to look like? And maybe that's how we can achieve it. We
Yeah,
can
that's a
put
good
that into the
question.
condition.
I mean, for me, it's the stabilization of the land there and aesthetics. It is a combined lot, right? So it's the same owner, but it's not to say that they wouldn't sell it to somebody else.
They would have to do
We'd have to re-subdivide
a
it.
subdivision.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You'd have to yep. So that,
Can I offer something? I think, would it be possible as part of a condition of approval, we provide a landscaping plan that would buffer that edge for staff review for conditions of approval? And if after 12 months of the CO, if the next phase is in the design isn't within the town process, then the either at that point or the next planting cycle, I think we could probably come up with language for that. We would then follow through with that phase 2 of the plan, if you will. Does that make sense? Phase 2 of the planting plan with the additional plantings along that edge. It's really just one edge we're talking about, that alley. And we could just develop the plan now in case nothing is constructed or designed on that lot within 12 months. And then
I kind of like that.
the following planting season, if it lands that it's December, we would wait till April to plant.
Yeah, you just don't know construction these days. I mean, we could have another recession and nothing gets done and, it then becomes a weed mess.
So if I've got this correct, you're going to, as a condition of approval, let me work this through. As a condition of approval, you will present to the planning department a landscape plan for the, for the adjacent property, for the edge of the adjacent property. That's really what we're looking at, the edge of the adjacent property. And prior to, so I'm adding this now, prior to a certificate of occupancy, will ensure that the adjacent lot has been seeded, lawn seeded or meadow, with a meadow mix. And putting that, then that ensures that at least there is some green space, either lawn or a meadow. And that's prior to the CO. And then now, as part of this application tonight and this draft motion as well, within 60 days, you will submit to the, of this motion, you will submit to the planning department a proposed landscaping plan for the border between the two properties, subject to the approval of the planning department.
Yep. That degree, yeah.
Okay. Knowing that if the planning department thinks it's not something that we like, they will come back to us and ask us.
It sounds reasonable to me.
That work?
I just,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Noah.
I'm still not sure what
For
to do
this part of
about.
for this part of the conversation, that's fine with me.
Yeah, now let's get back to the question of the width of the trail or the sidewalk. Are you talking about the trail or the sidewalk, Noah?
I mean, all of the above, really, guys, like this, I mean, we are here to work with the Downs as partners in building what they frame as a multimodal community. And a 5-foot sidewalk is not supportive of a multimodal community. You imagine a family, let me just put it this way, somebody's coming by in a wheelchair and a family biking by pulling kids in a thing that pulls kids. 5-foot, well, it's just not,
Trailer.
it's just, it's non-functional for a truly multimodal community, if that's what we're building here in Scarborough. And it's our job to help plan that. And 5-foot doesn't do it. This is not my field of study. I don't have a best practice recommendation of what that width should be. But I do know from a practical standpoint that that's not sufficient. 5 feet is just not functional.
Let me ask Eric or Autumn what the minimum requirements are for a sidewalk in the Innovation District.
That's what I was gonna say. I think that the sidewalk width is determined at the master plan process. I don't have that. Maybe Eric can pull that up,
And it-
but it's most likely 5 feet. That's what we require.
It
in the-
would have been shown on the
rest of
subdivision
the
plan.
town.
It's an item that's in the right of way as
Mhm.
well.
So I think, to your point, Noah, a wider sidewalk is certainly easier to maneuver. If 5 feet is very small to maneuver those sort of situations. But when they come in for the master plan process, that's when the planning board should stipulate that need wider sidewalks. And so now they're just building out in the same manner that they have been throughout the whole Innovation District. I think that's where we are with it.
Is there space? I'm trying to think of the last time I was out to Innovation Way. There's space on Innovation Way for a bike lane?
Yeah, if I could add a little more context to that, and I certainly appreciate the comments. There is a 5-foot bike lane on Innovation Way on both sides of the street. There's we're proposing a 5-foot wide sidewalk, one, because we were asked for a pedestrian connection, and I certainly understand the comments from the current pedestrian infrastructure, which are 5-foot sidewalks to the site. So that's what we've provided. In addition, if you look at the grading plan, there's some slope challenges with the right of way, and lot 3 is its own lot, not by this applicant. So we're trying to keep everything within the right of way, so we don't need to acquire rights and grading access to get onto an abutting lot. So I actually can't widen the sidewalk there with an acceptable slope off the sidewalk to tie back into the grade too. So we provided a 5-foot, and that basically it chews up the available right of way width. And again, we're talking about probably about 50 feet in front of the lot there from the driveway of the Oyster development to this project. So that's what we've provided.
Personal opinion is that it sounds as though the applicant has met the specific requirements of the master plan by putting the 5-foot sidewalk there. In addition, with 2 5-foot bike lanes, that eases my mind a little bit about the scenario you raised, Noah, of families biking on the sidewalks, because they won't. But they should, I'll take that back. They shouldn't. Doesn't mean that somebody won't. I think whether the sidewalk should be wider, the horse is out of the barn and the barn door is closed. The master plan agreed upon 5 feet as appropriate sidewalks for Innovation Way. And the applicant has met those.
Sorry, just a point of question here.
Sure.
The 5 feet, the master plan is saying that the minimum sidewalk width is 5 feet, correct?
We'd have to look at that language. I'm trying to pull it up right now, but can certainly look at that.
Even if it says minimum, and the applicant has met the minimum, and is presented a reason why it cannot do more than that. Whether there's no waiver requested, so we don't necessarily go to a burden of proof. In a situation like this, there is no burden of proof. The applicant has met minimum standards. I know I've certainly early on had occasion to complain about the applicant announcing they've met minimum standards, which I thought was not a good way to advertise what was going on there. But as a board, our role is to determine if the applicant has met the standards. And we can try and convince them to do more. If they cannot be convinced and they don't do more, they still have met the standards. And our role is to make that determination. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Eric, have you been able to find the information on the master plan?
Yes, when it talks about street and design width, the master plan states that the street cross sections are attached and include 11-foot travel lanes and 5-foot bicycle lanes and shoulders. In addition, esplanades and sidewalks are proposed. So it does not specify a specific dimension of the sidewalk.
Was that
in the
as
master
well
plan.
Innovation District?
Yes, that's in the innovation district.
Okay. So by that language, the applicant could propose and be within the guidelines of that language, a 3-foot sidewalk. Correct?
Yes, there's no minimum sidewalk width for the innovation district. So they could.
Well, it was a
It'd be up-
miss.
it'd be up-
Yeah, that was a miss, but that's what we've got. Ben?
Do we have any oversight ability to say that's not a reasonable sidewalk length? So say if they said 1-foot sidewalk, that would be within our purview to say that's not a reasonable sidewalk size. So is there some leeway there, is my question.
I think we would have that as a reasonable response, because we also have a responsibility to ensure at least that somebody can walk along there. The question is, where would we stop? And in other places, there are guidelines for the size of the sidewalk. And not all of them, I would imagine, actually as wide as 5 feet.
I can add to this too, just real quick.
Thank you.
The street acceptance ordinance requires a 5-foot sidewalk. And this is up against the right of way, which is what we're providing. So to the point, we wouldn't be able to provide a 3-foot sidewalk, so.
So we don't have to worry about the 1 foot. Roger?
It seems to me, and I may be mistaken, but on every phase of this whole development, we've received cross sections of the street, the profile of the street, the sidewalks, the esplanades, and everything all along the, throughout the whole process. And we've had comments about it. We've spent quite a bit of time talking about it. And we've seemed to agree, the board that was constituted at that time seemed to agree with all these things. So I'm not sure where we're going with all this.
Neither am I. I think I think you're correct, Roger. We have hashed through sidewalks at the Innovation District and have come up with essentially a consistent standard. Autumn was waving her phone at me, so I'm not sure if we've got somebody on the line or did have somebody.
It was actually meant for Eric. Sorry.
Okay.
I can't read an exhibit on my phone and I was asking if he could.
Can I?
All right, go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, just one other thing too. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's like a multi-path running along the is it Mill Creek? You know, on the west side of the Downs Road. Am I mistaken there? Isn't there supposed to be a wider path going along there? Right through? A what?
There's a shared use path.
Yeah, other portions of the Downs has shared use paths
Yeah.
throughout it, correct?
And those are 8 feet, are they not?
Some of them are up to 12.
Yeah.
Okay, those are shared use. That's where there is not a if I'm correct, there is not a bicycle line, a lane in the road.
Yeah.
Instead, the bicycles must go onto that path.
Yeah.
That's why they're wider than the rest of the sidewalks.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to bring that up, and the other thing too is, in the downtown area, it seems to me that there's a lot of focus on pedestrian use. You know, trying to reduce the impact of vehicles. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about that too, so. You know, I just think we are somewhat sensitive that. And I think the Downs people want it to be a walkable place, you know, pedestrian friendly. And now the Innovation District, that's a different story maybe. I mean, frankly, I don't see a lot of people walking on the sidewalks in the Innovation District as maybe the downtown or in the neighborhoods. That's a different story to me. That's a.
Thank you. Okay.
If you all will just give us 1 minute, there is an exhibit that I think Eric can pull up on his laptop.
Thank you.
the
Anything
master
that will
plan.
clarify. But I think what I'm hearing in effect is that there is standard 5 feet sidewalks in the Innovation District. We have consistently approved 5-foot sidewalks and have chewed the issue to death with prior applicants. At the same time, the Downs is looking to be multimodal, but there are bike lanes through the Innovation District. And again, in my personal opinion, they've met the standards. But that's up to the rest of the board, I guess, to vote on. Drew, what do you have?
I don't have anything else, Madam Chair.
The Innovation District Master Plan, the street section that I was trying to look at shows the 6-foot sidewalk. It's on page 12 of the master plan narrative. There's a street section shown.
Is there any way you can get that up on the screen for us to take a look? We're gonna try. If we can get this settled.
Now, for this particular one, you do have the 5-foot shoulder on both sides, on both lanes for the bike lanes.
Correct.
So this street section only shows a 5-foot shoulder bike lane on one side. So, and a 6-foot sidewalk on one side. So that's why I think that while it shows in here, it is written so that there's some flexibility within the district for street types. So, and what we have been approving is 5-foot in this area. But to Noah's point, I think it's really important when you go through this master plan process that you define these very specifically. And if there are targeted areas where it says pedestrian access is important and it shall be provided, then it needs to be very specific. But at this point in this one, I think this follows what we've been approving.
And if you wait for just a moment, Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, but if you eliminated a bike lane on the side of the sidewalk, in order to, from what you've said, in order to expand that sidewalk to 6 feet for 50 feet or 50 yards, what,
50 feet, yeah,
for 50 feet, you would have to dig up part of the road
correct, and reduce the width of the lane there.
and reduce have in effect a bump out on the road. While that might be a traffic calming measure, I'm not sure it's a 1-foot bump out would necessarily be helpful, and well, I'll put a period there. I tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm going to read the motion and ask for a vote, and folks, you're gonna go the way you are gonna go.
Before you
So-
do that, Madam Chair, could I ask on the landscaping provision if the condition that we have suggested or come up with is adequate to the board? Just kind of read.
Could you read
Sure.
it?
So there's prior to building permit, provide a landscape plan for the rest of the adjacent property. If after 12 months of the CO being issued for this building, no site plan is received, these plantings shall be installed. And then Autumn and I would put that date on our calendar once the CO is received. And then there's also prior to the issuance of a CO, ensure the adjacent lot has been seeded with a lawn or meadow mix.
Is that acceptable? All right, and I would say at this point, we are ignoring the question of the sidewalk on the plan. And again, it is up to folks to vote their conscience. All right. I have a motion, draft motion. I move to approve the project titled 106 and 126 Innovation Way proposed by Atlantic Commercial Holdings LLC as depicted on the plan set prepared by Goral Palmer dated 12/18/23 with the following findings and conditions. Findings, the proposal is for a 22,107 square foot building for light industrial and retail uses along Innovation Way. The board finds the project meets the standards of the zoning and site plan review ordinance requirements with the following conditions. Conditions, prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall A, address comments in the staff memo dated 1/16/24. B, execute and record a stormwater maintenance agreement with the town. The form of the stormwater maintenance agreement is located in Appendix 1 of the Town of Scarborough, Chapter 419, Post-Construction Stormwater Infrastructure Management Ordinance. C, pay the Chapter 419 Stormwater Maintenance Agreement and Reporting Fee, total $750. D, address planning board comments as discussed in the 122 meeting, including 1, provision of a landscape plan for the rest of the adjacent property. If after 12 months of the certificate of occupancy being issued for this building, no site plan is received, these plantings shall be installed. 2, confirm lighting fixture height, including bases, meets the, confirm lighting fixture height, including bases meets the maximum fixture height.
That's the only other change from the last.
E, excuse me, E, provide the final full plan set to the planning department. This shall include all site and civil plans, landscape plans, lighting plans, and architectural renderings and elevations. F, pay impact fees, total $9,568. Dunstan Corner, $5,608. Higas Parkway at Route 1, $3,960. This shall be reviewed by the planning department. 2, prior to the issuance of a sign permit, the applicant shall provide a final signage plan. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 3, prior to the start of construction, a pre-construction meeting is required. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. All plan modifications are to be completed prior to scheduling the pre-construction meeting. 4, prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall, A, submit evidence in the form of a letter of plan prepared and stamped by a professional engineer who either prepared the post-construction stormwater management plan and its associated facilities or supervised the plan and facilities construction and implementation. The letter or plan shall certify that the stormwater management facilities have been installed in accordance with the approved post-construction stormwater management plan and that they will function as intended by said plan. B, request an inspection by the planning department to ensure compliance with this planning board approval. C, ensure the adjacent lot has been seeded with a lawn or meadow mix. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jim Hebert. Doreen, please call the roll.
Rick Manking,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Henriksen,
Yes.
and Noah Furley.
No.
Thank you very much. That's 4 yeses, 1 no, and the project is approved.
Thank you.
Do we have the ability to?
Hi, Julie. Sorry. Thank you for your patience. I am going to put you up to the microphone and you can state your name and address and provide comments.
All right, could we just wait for just a moment?
Oh,
And to
sorry.
remind people that we are back to item 4.01, the zoning map amendment. And we will move that right now for the final comment after item 4.03, holding 4.04 in abeyance temporarily. Can we hear now the comment?
Property does abut this property that's going to be split in the back end. And my question is, the layout shows nothing. Where's the house going to be? Is there a septic plan, that doesn't show there? And I ask that specifically because within that backside of our property, we have a pond down there that, although you wouldn't swim in, is teeming with life. And I'd just like to know how closely this house and septic are going to be to the backside of our property.
That's a question. Those are questions that actually aren't part of this application. We are solely at this point examining and hearing on a proposal to split the lots. While the applicant has said they intend to put a building on currently on the lot that contains another building that's going to be demolished. How they're going to put the septic system in is subject to all of the building codes and not to what this board does and not to what's before us. What's before us, again, is solely the split of the lot. Now, I would suggest that it certainly would be appropriate for you to chat with the owners. She is nodding, Katie is nodding her head. She's willing to talk to you about what the plans look like. And I think neighbor to neighbor is probably the best way to handle this.
Yes. Okay, so thank you. I appreciate the comment.
All right, then, thank you for being very, very patient with our technology and hanging in there. I appreciate it, especially when the public takes the time to listen and to ask good questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let us return to the question of the lot request to split the lots. Is there any more comment from the planning board? Roger?
Yeah, I have no problem with what they want to do here. I just want a clarification, though. The minimum frontage is 100 feet. And I think I understand why it's 95 and 112, because of the side setback of the existing house. So does that have, do we have to, is that gonna require a waiver or is that just fine the way it is?
No, you're just approving or recommending the zoning change. They'll have to meet all the lot requirements when they do the lot split.
Right.
Okay, so,
Oh, we're doing
That
it
exhibit
ourselves.
is not being approved.
pardon me?
The exhibit is not being approved. That was just what they were proposing, like a.
Yeah, we're only looking at the lot split,
Okay,
then,
so when they come back, they're gonna have to have 100 foot?
Correct. They'll have to submit a building permit that shows that they have 100 feet for both sides.
Okay, all right, then fine, okay.
no other questions? Noah?
Yeah, I just had one question. I looked carefully at the abutter list document. That was helpful, but one thing related to that, the Scarborough Land Trust is not an abutter. However, that doesn't mean that none of the abutting parcels are conserved. I would like to know if any of the abutting parcels have any conservation easements on them.
I'm not aware of any. I would have to go and look at each individual one separately. I would need prior notice to find that out. Most likely not, but it's possible.
Okay.
I believe, I do not believe that there's anything conserved there, and I speak basically from my work on the Patuxent Conservation Land Board and discussions with the land board and discussions with the land trust in a lot of areas, but as far as I can remember, there is nothing conserved in that area.
Me too.
All right, in that case, if there are no additional comments, I move to recommend approval of the proposed zone change by Joseph Christopher and Catherine Treem. The change would rezone 42 Two Rod Road from rural farming, RF, to residential 2, R2, to allow a lot split in construction of a new home. The board finds the rezoning is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and is reasonable given the surrounding uses and adjacent R2 zoning.
I second.
We have a second from Rick Meinking. Doreen, call the roll, please.
Rick Manking,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
Yes,
James Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Henriksen.
Yes.
And Noah Perla.
Abstain.
All right, thank you. The motion passes. This will go to the ZBA, is that correct?
No, the next step is town council for first reading on February 7th.
Okay, thank you. Catherine, thank you very much for hanging in there with us. All right, moving on, item 404. Do we have the ability to hear from people online?
I'd like to try something.
We have had a lot of problems with technology at this meeting.
Okay. Well, I think if you promoted me as a panelist, maybe I might be able to share.
We could promote you as a panelist and then you would be subject to some ear-splitting static.
Yes, you do.
All right, in that case, wait a moment, please. Section 4.04, AR Building is requesting site plan amendment to review to a site plan amendment review to relocate one of 10 previously approved apartment buildings at 35 Mussey Road. The project also involves relocation of the Mussey Road driveway to allow for the building relocation. The property is further identified as Assessors Map R38, Lot 1 for the town.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a quick review. This project was originally approved by the Planning Board in 2022. The applicant's currently proposing to relocate one of the approved apartment buildings across one of the private ways, which also would need to include a driveway relocation. Staff's primary concern is updating the off-site sidewalk exhibits and plans and also determining the final location of a crossing on Muzzy Road in the area of the Eight Corners School. A draft motion has been provided for the board's consideration with this and other standard conditions in mind. And with that, I turn it back to you.
Thank you. Now for the applicant.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? All right, it's Brandon Carr with the Preet Engineering. I'm online with, I've got Emily at AR Building by text. So if we have any specific questions for her, I think I could kind of relay them to everyone. So basically, we're here, as Eric and Autumn mentioned, for a modification to a approval from last year for a 120 unit residential development. Autumn, you can probably just skip to slide 5, 6. We've gone over the AR since we're having kind of technical difficulties. I'll just skip through those, but the slide in front of you shows the approved project, and that is currently under construction now. It consisted of 10 12-unit buildings for 120 units in total. And then there's an external clubhouse up at the intersection of Mussey Road and Gorham Road, and that'd be the top kind of right of your screen there, the square. The other 12 buildings are residential buildings. You can see that there's parking scattered throughout the site around the buildings. There's an entrance on Mussey Road and on Gorham Road. And then there is a large stormwater area in the bottom left there, so the southwestern portion of the site. Autumn, if you go to the next slide, you'll see the changes that we're proposing. So we're proposing to move building 6, which is kind of in the interior of the site, and moving it to the northwest to along Mussey Road there. And the reason for this is, as we did some additional geotechnical investigation on site, we found some deeper soils under the footprint of building 6 that really don't lend itself to putting a building over it. They would have required some substantial foundation improvements that would have made the building really infeasible to build at that location. So we are proposing to slide it kind of northwest about maybe 400 feet, 300 feet or so, up along the entrance. And as part of that, we would also move the Mussey Road entrance about 120 feet east towards Gorham Road. Our traffic engineer, Sebago Technics, I believe Nikki's on the line, but again, I probably can't hear from her. We submitted an analysis showing that new location does provide adequate access and site distance on Mussey Road for that. So it's a adequate location for that new entrance. So we'd have to update those offsite improvement plans. That's
we have submitted a draft, but we would work through the final, details of that and location of that crossing, the pedestrian crossing, because that all keys into a much larger sidewalk, improvement project that our applicant's committing to in this area. As part of the changes, the parking, the drainage, sewer utilities, water utilities, all that have been adjusted to facilitate this new building. Stormwater, it was really just a conveyance method that had to be updated because it all goes to that single pond in the back. It's actually a slight decrease in impervious on the site. Water and sewer, we're just adjusting the network in this building's connection. Really not a lot of details there. We've provided those plans to both the water and the sewer authorities and gotten their sign off on those changes. And then the landscaping and lighting plans have been updated. There were no changes. I should note that there's no changes to the limit of work. And like I said, the total impervious on site actually went down a little bit. Autumn, if you want to go to the next slide, it's just a zoomed in view of the new building 6 location. This is an updated view. We received some staff comments about adding some more vegetative screening around building 6, especially between Mussey Road and building 6. So this plan reflects proposed change to address that comment. And then the next slide is the offsite improvements adjustment. So previously, the previous location of the Mussey Road entrance teed up with the entrance across the street from us on the northern side. So we were proposing to leave the pedestrian crossing at that former location and then extend the sidewalk on our side of the road up to our new entrance and cross it there. Since the entrances are now offset, it really makes sense to locate it at one entrance and not kind of mid-block configuration as noted in some of the comments. So this was our proposal, but we would like to request if the board would find that favorable, a condition that we work with staff to kind of finalize that location somewhere in this stretch here, and exactly how that crossing could work the best geometry wise and slope wise. And there are some obstructions in the right of way on the other side that we try to avoid with this alignment. Then the last slide just has a couple pictures of the current conditions out there. The site is under construction. We've been under construction for about, I believe, 2 months now. So contract is focusing on some of the earthwork and utility installation and the drainage. Things are moving fairly quick. There are some tough soils to deal with out there, but they're managing and they're moving ahead. So that's really the proposed site plan amendment. If you would like, we did receive some comments from staff. I can quickly just, we haven't had a chance to formally respond to those, but I could just kind of high level give you where we're headed. I think that we are able to pretty much address all of them, either by changes we've already made or just agree to changes. There was one related to the electric vehicle charging I'd like to discuss a little further. But if you have the staff review memo, the first 2 comments relate to that offsite improvement location on Mussey Road, and we would just commit to work with staff to finalize the exact geometry of that, as we did under the previous approval. If you remember last year when we were before you, we kind of settled on a schematic overview of what the offsite would be, and then we worked with staff to finalize the exact design of that. The third comment is related to the residential density. Just as part of this project, a little over 3 acres was sold to Nonesuch River Brewing. It's on the eastern side of the site along Gorham Road, and that was just to clarify that by providing that lot to Nonesuch, that our density would still work, and we updated the calculations on the plans to show that we still are above the required density. So we have about 14.6 acres left of upland that results in 73.5 units, which is higher than the 69.6 that we're proposing. So we lost a little over 3 acres, or we sold a little over 3 acres to Nonesuch. comment 4 was the one I wanted to discuss. It's a new requirement since our approval was granted, and it revolves around the electric vehicle charging. Currently, there's kind of 3 levels of requirements. First one is that 5% of the spaces day one be EV installed, which we meet. We have 233 total spaces on site, and we're proposing 16 chargers at the moment, which is about 7% of the spaces. And then the upper requirement of the EV ordinance is that 65% of parking be EV capable. So that means conduits installed. And we've committed to meet that. That's something that AR does on all their developments, really looking forward. Not exactly knowing when the demand for EV charging will really increase above that kind of initial piece. We've been laying out our parking lots so that we don't have a lot of head-to-head parking, and then leaving conduit in the ground so that when we do need to add chargers, it's there to run the cables, and then leaving some space throughout the site for additional transformers and chargers and things like that. The one that we were requesting, we're going to request a waiver from was the middle one. So the middle requirement is that 30% of the spaces be what the town is calling EV ready. So that means conduit installed with the electrical capacity available. Like I said, we have no issues with installing the conduit, but the electrical equipment kind of being installed day one. It's a pretty substantial upfront cost. 2, utility installers typically won't install transformers if the demand isn't really there yet. And then what we've been finding even over the past 6-7 years that AR has really been kind of adding a lot of EV chargers to their developments is that technology is really advancing so quickly that it's in our mind might be cost prohibitive to install equipment now that becomes outdated by the time we actually need to use it. So it's between the cost up front and then the kind of the rate that the equipment is being advanced, we would ask that we not be required to install that 30% of parking extra capacity. And that basically in the future, AR sees the demand for EV chargers, and it would be in their best interest to serve their the need of whatever renters they have. So typically their approach has been as people need more EV charging, they have it set up so that it can be added. That was really the comment that wanted to have some discussion with the board about. So I can just skim through the last few and then we can go back to that, because I know probably back and forth may not be as easy with me on the phone. We had comment 5 was about a waiver that was granted to the original proposal that the drive aisle be allowed to be 24 feet instead of 25 feet, which we matched with this revision. Number 6 requires entrances to new buildings to have outdoor seating, and we are providing some outdoor seating at the clubhouse, but not at each individual building. There are patios or decks for every unit, so there is private outdoor area, but we're not proposing outdoor kind of amenities at each building. There was comment 7 was about the slope on the proposed relocated driveway, which we adjusted, and we can meet that requirement. Comment 8 was about additional buffering to building 6, which you can see on the screen. Comment 9 was about the lighting. This was a new ordinance that has come up since our last approval, and we have no issues with the requirements for mounting height or the temperature and density of the lighting. And we can provide the additional information about these cut fix sheets for the fixtures. They're the same ones that were approved previously about how the lighting is shielded from not only the adjacent properties, the property line, but also the wetland resources on site. we did on the new plan, it said that the mounting height was 22.5 feet, which is above the town's maximum standard of 20. So we are going to revise that to 20 feet. And then the last two comments were just that we work out the addressing with E911 officer, which we have, and we're providing an updated exhibit to Eric. And then that the sanitary district update approve the plans, which we have provided those plans, and they've responded that they approved of the changes made. So that's kind of just that was an overview of what we're here for the site plan amendment, and then kind of the staff comments. If the board has any questions, I can do my best to answer them. Emily Mitchell is available if there's any specific questions that I can't answer, and she could be able to call in as well if necessary.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public in the room who would like to comment on this? Or any member online, any member of the public online that we can actually reach? All right, thank you. Public hearing is over. Before I turn this over to the board, let me just preface the board comments with saying you unfortunately are now in the position of coming before us with a change after quite a few ordinances have changed. And while we had originally contemplated a draft motion, I think listening to you and looking at the material that perhaps it would be better that we hold off on a draft motion, because there are quite a few areas to consider because of those changes and because of the institutions of new ordinances. I think we would do you a disservice if we all of a sudden started talking about things like when you were talking about the EV. We know we actually can't waive that. There are other, but there are other alternatives. But that really isn't going to work too well when you're not in front of us and we cannot have a conversation, but instead we are listening through Autumn's phone. Saying that, let's hear from the board and hear the questions and the issues that they have. It's still possible that we could go to a draft motion, but my sense is because of some very unique circumstances in terms of ordinance changes, we probably should wait on that and look at hearing this at our next meeting. Who wants to go first? Well, Rick
ahead,
is
Jim.
first, and then Jim is next.
Me first? Yeah, I believe there is a way you can comply with our EV standards through a fee in lieu of. I would not be, this is tough, and I will agree with Madam Chair here that these ordinances really, are our guardrails, and I'm not sure you can't meet that 30% on the EV ready. And so I'm going to have a hard time agreeing to letting you get a waiver on that. I'm not sure, Autumn, there's an impact fee that they could. We have it for
There is a
chargers
fee,
themselves, right?
Yes, I just want to be very clear on how the ordinance is written for electrical vehicle charging infrastructure. So I want you to take into consideration that this is an amended site plan for a portion of their site.
Right.
So if this was already constructed, they would already have parking installed, and they've already cleared the site and they are moving along in that path. And then what would happen is when they came in for the amended site plan, the way the ordinance is worded, the ordinance would apply to the amended portion, not the entirety of the site. They would not be required to dig up their site. And so they are in a conundrum because they are in the middle. They are not installed yet. And that is the issue that I see. But I think,
But we're also giving them more parking spots, right, than what they
and,
originally came to.
and that is something that.
That's what they've
that's-
requested and that remains to be seen.
They've requested 8 spaces, and so if those 8 spaces, those would be the new parking area that the EV ordinance would very literally apply to if they had already constructed.
I see.
But then they've also, there's also concern about, do they need the additional 8 spaces and should those be swapped out? So that's something for you all to discuss. But I just wanted you to take into account the EV ordinance does really apply for new and redevelopment. This is probably one of the only times you'll see it mid-build, mid-construction. So I think you have some flexibility, if you will, on how you approach it.
Well, let's address that then. The extra parking spots and the parking spots that are now that are there and there's no building there. That kind of looks weird to me. Doesn't seem like it's needed. And I'd love to hear the applicant explain why they have to keep those parking spots in there when there's no building directly associated with it.
Brandon, can you address that question?
Yes, and I see, so just to clarify, for the site as a whole, we went from 227 spaces on the approved site plan, and now we have 233. So that's an additional 6 spaces. So, I mean, if the answer is to lose 6 spaces throughout the development to make it even, so that we're not necessarily adding spaces, that we're just relocating them close. And the reason we're putting them up along the entrance is to get them closer to the new building 6. So if it makes sense to basically take 6 from where the building used to be away and just delete them, I think that would be totally acceptable. So net wise, we wouldn't be adding any spaces across the development.
All right.
And just to add to that, we could consider, if we did consider those 8 spaces in front of building 6, applicable to the site amendment change, we could easily provide a charger for that to meet. Basically, that would make 2 of those 8 spaces EV.
Okay. Any thoughts about maybe a play area for that empty area where that building is moving, like playground or something like that?
Hey, I know AR typically doesn't do playgrounds, but if we're gonna continue anyways tonight, we could definitely have that conversation with them and address that at the next meeting, or, either way. Let me see, we could put some issues, typically they would do outdoor, kind of more.
Dog park.
To the place, yeah, dog park, benches, things like that.
Well, I'd like to definitely see what we could do with that empty area there. It just seems kind of funky to be moving a building and I don't know. I like the layout that you proposed and we approved back in 2022. And just feel like moving that building and leaving that space empty just kind of has a void to it. And I think it would serve the community there with some sort of amenity, playground / dog park, gathering area, a gazebo or something like that, that would kind of fill in that area. Otherwise, I don't have a lot of heartache about moving this building. I'm going to leave the traffic to those that better understand traffic and the movement there. But that would be, from my standpoint, those would be something that I would like you to consider and bring back your thoughts to this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Then Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question I have related to EV charging. You're saying that you're concerned right now it's cost prohibitive to install the infrastructure outside of conduit in the ground. Is that correct?
That's the main concern.
Understood. I know right now CMP and all the power utilities have a significant backlog on equipment, just from transformers to CT cabinets to panel boards. Would you be amenable to, in lieu of ordering all the equipment, and this may be a discussion that we can see if we would be agreeable to this, instead of installing the electrified equipment, instead of installing the additional transformer, your additional metering enclosure, and your actual physical running cable for your for the electrical service needed for this EV, would you be amenable to installing an underground primary duct bank to a set location on site where that would go in the future if needed, complete with a either 7x7 or 9x9 transformer pad or whatever is required by the utility? Would you be willing to do that? And then just, you can cover the transformer pad or whatever equipment pad you'd have to put in. You just cover it with landscaping for now, but you would have that underground piping to the road for the CMP to run their conduit to, or cable to, excuse me. So would you at least be able to consider installing the duct bank from the road to a transformer pad? And then from the transformer pad, the branch conduit to the future spaces. That way you're just burying everything in the ground, which might be your biggest cost and least cost right now since the earth is all torn up. Does that make sense?
I think that's something we could look at. We'd have to talk to our electrical designers to see exactly how many additional transformers. I mean, that's kind of another moving target right now, is the amount of chargers that can be served by a transformer. But just, rule of thumb, we might be looking at, so for 30% would be an additional maybe 70 spaces, maybe another 2 or 3 transformers. We could definitely look at that.
I would suggest going as far to the point of designing the entire system, where it would go if you were to install it today, where it would go on the site. And that way you can coordinate that, at least preliminarily, with CMP, because you're going to be dealing with CMP for the new electrical service to this site anyways, while they're there on site, coordinate the location that they would prefer. And coordinate that with your in-house electrical engineer. That way you can have the underground, I'll say right now, less expensive compared to doing it later, your less expensive underground infrastructure installed at this point. That's one less hurdle you have to deal with in the future when you will have to upgrade for your additional EV in that space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I can definitely talk to AR and our designers and CMP and see, if that's something that we can, accommodate.
Cool. Yeah, I guess that would be an action item for me that I'd like to see you fall back on with us on. Next one is, while I am a little disheartened to see the nice entrance off of Muzzy Road taken away, I think that kind of gave that whole entrance a lot of character rather than just a straight drive off of Muzzy Road. I'd like to see more dense plantings around Building 6, between Building 6 and Muzzy Road. Only because you have those residential buildings directly across the street. And I'd like to see more coverage just for their sake of privacy and for the privacy of the folks in Building 6 as well. Is that possible?
I believe it will be. Yeah, not the plans that you have in front of you, but we already have added some screening and we can add some additional ones if the board wants.
Great. The other item I have is with the light fixtures, making sure that they're 3000 Kelvin, 80 CRI. I'd like to see variable dimming control for these fixtures as well. Again, for the sake of the folks that live right across the street. If for some odd reason your wall-mounted building fixtures on 6, 1, 2, and 3 are too bright for the folks across the road, you'd have the ability to dim those down by, say, 10% increments. Some kind of variability with control so you can dim those down to avoid light pollution. Additionally, the more reason for this as well is, as this area is developed over time, buildings are replaced and they're increased in size to their maximum building envelope that we're seeing. We want to have the level of control available so that, yes, you're meeting the requirements on your site, but combined with light pollution and ambient light from all the other future potential sites in this area, we don't want this to be just sort of a gigantic ball of light coming out of here. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Great. So I guess I'd like to see an action item to include some variable dimming for the building and sight line of fixtures as well, as it includes the poles. Lastly, do you have concrete, are you planning to have concrete bases for your light poles, types A and A2?
It depends on the location. Most of our lighting, or if not all of it, would be located in like a landscape area. So I was watching the previous application. Typically in a landscape area, that concrete base would only be maybe 6 or 8 inches above grade. And to answer your question, that would be inclusive of the mounting height. So the mounting height would be the fixture. So if it's 20 feet, if the pole was 19 feet and the base was a foot, it wouldn't be in addition to.
Perfect. You heard me earlier, so thank you very much for being paying attention to that. Yeah, so as long as the total fixture height is under that 20 feet, and I would even consider with your type A fixtures in the parking lot, maybe having that like a 2-foot base on there just for snow plowing. Unfortunately, a 6-inch concrete base isn't going to do much if a snow plow hits it, but a 2.5-foot one might, and might be cheaper for you for getting shorter poles there as well.
Yep.
That is my last comment. Rick alluded to it, and that space that's vacated by the former Building 6 location, having some kind of cool green space there would be really nice, like something that the folks in this little in this set of buildings can enjoy. I think would be a real benefit here and give the place a lot of character. What's really missing in a lot of these developments is character. And you have an opportunity with this green space here just to do something basic, but something nice that the residents there can enjoy. So I'd like you to give some thought to that if you would, please.
Yep, we will definitely have something for the board at the next hearing.
Cool. Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Roger, you want to go next?
I'll give it a try. So we're only dealing with basically relocated Building 6 and the vacant spot that the space is being vacated,
Correct.
right?
Well, also the change in the direction of the road, the
Yeah.
road onto
the
Mussey
entrance.
Road. Yeah.
Okay. Are we talking about any more spaces, parking spaces?
Yeah, they're adding.
Yeah, they want to add 8. And
Are
at this
those-
point, they had not
Are those-
proposed subtracting any, although when Rick was talking to them, they indicated a willingness to do so, as
Okay.
far as I know.
And would those, if they were to remove them, would those be the ones that would be abutting the vacated spot somewhere, right?
That would be my hope, and that would become additional green space,
Okay.
would be my hope.
Okay. And on the existing plan, were there any provisions for EV chargers or conduit or anything like that on any of the buildings? On the approved plan?
Yeah, so on the approved plan across the site, we had 16 EV chargers total, which was about 7% of the parking. And just as practice, we typically install conduit, additional conduit to most, if not all, kind of landscaped areas to make almost all the parking on site EV adaptable.
Okay, so each building you were basically going to have accommodations for 2? Is that what I heard?
16.
It's maybe 1.5. They're kind of centered between it. So there's 12 total buildings and there's 16 total chargers on 8 pedestals because they're double heads. So we tried to kind of locate them between buildings, if you will.
Okay. And you're, I mean, I'm not a technical expert like my colleagues here, but you're saying that putting the conduit with the cable is cost prohibitive?
It's not so much the additional conduit or cable, it's all the electrical components, the transformers, the switchgear, the panels, things like that, that really add up day one to not be utilized.
Okay, Huh? Well, you know, just from a business point of view, it seems to me there's gonna be a demand for this in the future anyways. And whatever you can do during construction is gonna be less expensive than having to do it later on. So, I guess whatever you could do, like my colleague here, Jim, suggested doing as much underground as you can. I guess that's what I would recommend too, is if, work it out if you can, you know? I agree doing something with that space also, the empty space. I'm not sure a playground, because I don't think you're gonna have that many kids in these apartments, but something would be appropriate for a helicopter landing spot or something like that. And I think from what I've seen so far, what you want to do with the new entrance on the sidewalk, that seems to be okay, as far as I can see at this point. So I don't know what else I could add, if I've added anything.
You've always added something, Roger. If only your good humor, but I appreciate it. Let me turn down here to Noah and then Ben.
Hey there, I want to ask a question that we haven't talked about, and it's in our materials, and I apologize if this has been resolved earlier, and you can just tell me really quickly. There's an archaeological document in our materials showing that there was a small significant archaeological find, and included a recommendation of donating that parcel to Land Trust or Historical Society. Has this already been dealt with?
Yeah, so the architectural site is on the portion of the property that was not proposed to be dedicated to the land trust. Basically, everything south of the river was going to be dedicated to the land trust. I don't know if that has legally happened yet, but the archaeological site that was investigated is on the north side, but it is outside the limit of work. And will be preserved. It's down at a lower tier, closer adjacent to the river. And I just got a message from Emily that southern portion has been given over to the land trust.
And I can confirm, the applicant has sent us the deed that was given to the Scarborough Land, or that shows the land was conveyed to the Scarborough Land Trust. It was 32 acres in total out of about a 50+ acre site. So it was about 2/3 of the site that was conveyed to the land trust.
So sorry, I might be a little confused here. Is the archaeological site in the part that was given to the land trust?
No, it is not.
Okay, but the recommendation from the archaeologist here is that, you know, that small portion, wherever it is, be formally conserved, correct? That is the specific language that letter describes, right?
I don't have the letter in front of me, but I know that
I
area
do.
was identified and that it was preserved and identified as outside of the limit of work, and historical Maine Historic did sign off on that approach, and I believe that's how it was approved, in 2022.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read his letter to you, so that we're all on the same page. It says, one means of achieving this goal would be a donation of a piece of the property, including the archaeological site and buffer, to a land trust, and designation of the site area as requiring written consultation with and permission from the Maine Historical Preservation Commission.
Oh, sorry.
The
Sorry,
land-
Brandon. Start over from that. Apologize.
I was trying to find the exhibit showing the land donation, to confirm that if it was or not. Because the area that Eric read seems bigger than what's just south of the river. So it may have been. If I can find that right now, I'm not sure if I can. But I can say that that was part of the original application. It's not in the, area that we're modifying tonight. That land transfer has been completed and at that time was found acceptable to both the land trust and Maine Historic as a follow-up to that letter that was just written. I read.
Can anybody for the town help resolve this matter? I'm not sure if I'm getting an answer or if I'm here to my question.
It sounds to me without specifically looking at it, the archaeological site has not been given to the Scarborough Land Trust or conserved. However, it's outside the limits of construction for the project. So it's not to be touched or disturbed. But we can look into it further and find out. I'm not sure about the original approvals, if that came up when the board approved it, or if there was some discussion of conserving that in a separate easement. But I can certainly look into it for you.
Okay. And I apologize to the board if this is fodder that the board dealt with before I was on the board and this was approved. Strikes me as important, and given, especially since it was in our materials for this meeting specifically, I assumed that this was part of the comment. So my second question, and I guess I'll leave that up to the town to hopefully kind of investigate the situation. My second question is, with the moving of the building, will doing so necessitate any further land clearing, forest clearing?
No, there's no changes to the limited disturbance
Okay,
under this
Great.
amendment.
great, thank you. And then we've already talked, I had a question about, we've already talked about folks have kind of given you, I agree with the other folks who said, let's use this space wisely where you be moving it, so I'll skip that. And then last kind of two things for me. I believe strongly in our EV ordinance, and I think we need to stand behind it, frankly. It strikes me that EV demand is increasing, and what cheaper time to put in the infrastructure than when you're completely clearing a site. And so I really encourage the board to stand behind the ordinance that we spent an enormous amount of time working on and supporting. But I did want to ask you one last comment. Because I'm not fully sure I understood what you were saying. You talked about the outdoor seating at each of the apartments, and if I understand correct, you were asked to put outdoor seating, but you don't want to at each of the unit buildings. Is that, am I saying that correct?
So the staff comment was, site plan section 4E12 requires entrances to all newer renovated buildings to be complemented with outdoor seating or use areas. And since we have each building, each unit has private seating and private outdoor recreation area adjacent to the unit. And then we have an outdoor clubhouse where kind of those amenities are centered for the community. We weren't proposing additional, say benches or seating directly outside the front door of the building. We really didn't see them as being utilized much right outside the building when people have their own amenity space adjacent, with a slider to their unit. And then the pool and fitness and all that. And if we do something with the previous building 6 location area, that's kind of a more centrally located, consolidated recreation area that's sticking a bench at every front door of each buildings.
Okay, can I ask the chair, can you talk about kind of past precedents for the town and how we've handled this issue?
We have always required something where pedestrians can meet, preferably sit outside of buildings. And if I could hear through the static, the proposal is only for the new building. Based upon, I believe the applicant is saying the fact that, well, there's other opportunities. We've not paid any attention to other opportunities. The point is that there should be a bench in front of the building.
Okay, thank you. That was clear. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess one of the downsides of going last is that most of my points have already been covered by my colleagues, but I appreciate that. I was just looking at reviewing that ordinance piece, and it technically states seating or use areas, including canopies, recessed entrances, seating areas, decorative plantings, lawn areas, or other elements that can be incorporated to serve as a pedestrian space or gathering areas. So, I mean, I don't know that I read that as necessarily requiring a bench. I know we have done that in most cases, or maybe all cases so far, but I think technically we might have a little bit of leeway with something similar if you have a canopy overhead or something. That's kind of how I'm reading it. Otherwise, I do agree with my colleagues' comments and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just simply comment on the concept of benches and gathering spaces. Some folks have chosen to do canopies. Some folks have chosen to do canopies and sitting walls. Ben is correct. There is some allowance there. Usually companies are finding it basically cost effective to put in a bench rather than a canopy, a permanent, which would have to be basically a permanent canopy, and that can end up costing money because it's a change in the architectural design. But it does need to be a place where, for instance, as I think about it, people come up and they want to get into the building and the building is locked, and they're going to put their groceries someplace while they get out the keys. In other words, it's not just a sitting place, but it's a convenience for those people who are approaching, or a neighbor wants to sit down there and wait for somebody to come down and meet them. There's a lot of purpose to having a gathering space that includes some place for somebody to sit down. And we have been pretty firm in insisting that whatever it is, be very visible and friendly to pedestrians and to people who want to enter and exit the building or just hang around in the front. So, as I said, mostly the developers have found it easiest to find a place to put a bench. It's up to you to bring us something else that meets the ordinance if you would like to do that. And Ben has referenced the ordinance, so go ahead, bring us something. But I think you'll find it's easier to find a bench there. The ordinance does not contemplate substituting an area unconnected to the front of the building for a bench in front of the building. In other words, saying, well, we've got a place over here across the road where somebody can sit down is not acceptable. Go ahead, Roger.
Just a point of clarification. On the other buildings,
There are benches, I believe.
are there benches?
I believe there are benches on the other buildings.
So I think that was sort of the intent of the comment, is that they weren't proposed as part of the buildings, with the exception being the common clubhouse. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess my point is, if we approved it previously without the benches, I think it'd be consistent just to have this one consistent with all the other buildings.
What do we have, Autumn? Or Eric? For the other buildings?
There aren't any benches shown for the other buildings. It's just essentially for the clubhouse is where they're showing benches. So there aren't any shown for any of the 10 residential buildings.
If I can add, there are covered areas, there's about a 8 by 12 canopy at each building entrance on all the proposed buildings.
Okay, so an 8 by 10 canopy, which substitutes for, under the ordinance, substitutes for a bench. So you might want to consider that as part of the architectural consistency. The canopy, as in the other buildings, and a canopy in this. As I said, bring something to us that either, that in some way comports with the ordinance.
Like, as opposed, so it does have the canopy, was that, is that acceptable?
I'm sorry, I constantly am hearing an echo, so it's very difficult.
I'll say it for you, Brendan. So he was just saying that this building is exactly the same as the other buildings, and so he's asking if the canopy in the other buildings is acceptable, or does he need to add a bench for this building?
I would assume that the,
Canopies are clearly in the architectural drawing, and I think that's consistent with what we approved when it came before us.
all right, as long as the building has the canopy and is consistent with what we've otherwise approved, which was was in agreement with the ordinance allowing canopies and other gathering places. I also requested, I also had a note about that serendipitous open space area that's now been developed. To me, that's a great opportunity for you to come up with something imaginative. I'm not necessarily convinced that you need a playground, as Roger suggested. I think that there might not be many students there, many young kids, but there may be. I think a bocce court, a gazebo, a dog area, a conversation area, some permeable pavers with seating around there, someplace that's a really good gathering space for people. And those parking spots that are no longer connected to the new building, the old parking spots, become more permeable green space. That would be, I think, of a great benefit to all of the residents. So please come back to us with a landscape plan for that area and a proposal that makes a good use of outdoor space and gathering space. In terms of the EVs, I got lost someplace. So I really need to see what you have, what you're proposing. Eric, I'm going to ask Eric just to recite in effect what we're looking for. And the burden of proof is on you to see if you can meet that area of the ordinance. And then the board will decide from there what we're going to do. Eric?
Yeah, so sort of to Autumn's point, the zoning ordinance specifies that all new or redevelopment parking facilities shall be required to install this electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So it's up to the, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, for the applicant to provide that burden of proof to be able to say that this does not constitute a redevelopment of a parking facility to that end. So that's really the board's determination to make based on what the applicant provides.
Also, you had talked about an in lieu of.
Yes, there is also an in lieu fee that's outlined in the ordinance. $15,000 per level 3 space, 8,000 per level 2 space. I believe we're talking about the EV ready spaces at this point, so that would be $3,000 per required space. So there's certainly some consideration to be made in that regard as well.
So you have additional options there. Again, the burden of proof is on you to show us how you're going to meet the requirements of the ordinance. And again, I look forward to what you're doing with that. I urge you to work with the planning department staff. In a matter like this, they are your best friends. So I hope that you meet as fast with them as fast as possible. I do note that as part of the staff comments on the site plan, the staff comments under the site plan elements, the original approval was granted with a waiver for drive aisle width, Staff recommends the board grants this waiver again or reference it in any decision of approval to allow a 20-foot wide drive aisle to be installed where 25 feet is the minimum standard. So I remind the board that also that's going to be something that they will come to us now with an explicit waiver, and that we will ensure to consider that when they bring the information back to us. Roger, did you have one other thing?
Yeah,
One last thing?
Basically, it's along the same line that I just discussed with the benches and everything, you know. If they have to, and don't get me wrong, I think it makes sense as from a business point of view to be, you know, to take care of the EV and all the requirements and things like that strictly from a business point of view, especially during construction. But this one building, if we require them to meet the current standards, this one building would be different than the other 9 buildings. Is it 10 buildings all told?
There's 12.
Well, then the other 11 buildings. That would be correct?
So it kind of sounded like the board was considering, to Rachel's point, hearing the applicant's argument for why this doesn't constitute a redeveloped parking area. Or I know earlier in the meeting, we were talking about that just the spaces in front of the new location for building 6 would be considered applicable to the EV standard. So if it's 8 spaces or 10 spaces, then, 5% would have to be installed, 30% would have to be capable, and then the remaining percentage would have to be EV ready. So there's a number of ways that the board could interpret this, and I think that's really up for the applicant to make that argument, to Rachel's point.
Right, but I would think the applicant would like to have all his properties, all the individual buildings with the related amenities all similar. So you don't have one building that's different, you know?
That's up to the applicant.
Okay.
And look forward to seeing what they finally figure out after all of this.
Okay. That's it.
All right, in that case, folks, sorry that we really couldn't come to a decision at this point. I think there are simply questions, complicated questions that we need answered, and preferably with you in the room so we can have a better conversation and not just through Autumn's phone into a microphone, into the Zoom call. But Autumn has done yeoman's work, holding up the phone, although I noticed she's now resting her elbow more consistently. We appreciate your forbearance and understanding of our technology problems, and we will see you hopefully at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
If I could, I'd just like to thank the board. I know this wasn't ideal, but with the last minute change, kind of travel plans got shifted. So I appreciate you at least hearing us and getting our this feedback out there so that we can respond to it at the next hearing.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the election of officers. I'm going to surprise Roger with this because per Robert's rules, the secretary of the board is first elected by the chair holds the election for the secretary of the board. The secretary of the board then holds the election for the chair and vice chair. Roger
Didn't have it
says
last year either.
he doesn't have the training. He didn't have it last year. We'll work you through, Roger. Go ahead. The chair would like to nominate Roger Beely as the secretary of the board.
So moved.
Roger has served for these many years in spite of his protestation that he has not had enough training. And he has done a fine job. The workload is overwhelming, but he has managed it. Are there other nominations? Hearing none, sorry, Roger. Chair calls nominations closed. And the chair would like a motion from a board member that we cast one vote to elect Roger Beely as the secretary of the board.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. There is moved and seconded that one vote be cast for Roger Beely as secretary of the board. Doreen, call the roll.
Rick King,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
$20.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes, you can ask Roger too.
Yes.
And no is a yes. Right, Roger, you going to vote for yourself?
No. Yes.
Roger said no, he is going to vote. So he voted.
I do have some demands.
So- I'm sorry, we'll talk later. Thank you very much. I am now going to turn this over to Roger to hold a vote, election for the chair and vice chair.
Okay, I'm calling for nominations for the chair of the planning board.
Mr. Secretary, I nominate Rachel Henderson for Chair of the Planning Board. I've had the pleasure of working with her for a few years now, and we get through the meetings, and her wealth of knowledge is beneficial to this board, and I so move that nomination forward.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
Just like to say that Rachel has been an excellent chair of my last 12 months that I've been on the board, and I fully support her renomination.
Did she pay you to say that?
I can't say that at this time.
Okay, all those,
And excuse me, Roger said that without his light on, luckily.
no, it's been on. Doreen, would you call the roll?
Rick King,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
Noah Perla,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous.
I feel bad for you.
Now, do you take over now?
Yes.
You want your thing?
No, I've got one.
Don't ever give him again.
The chair, thank you very much, folks. I appreciate it, I think. I am going to just remind folks that I really have enjoyed being the chair, and I thank you for electing me for another year. I am term limited. I have this year and next year, and that's it. So if anybody for next year wants to talk about being a chair or find out what it means and the work that's involved and wants to step forward for next year, that would be just fine. If you want to elect me again next year, that's fine. But I really want to know if there is somebody or more than one person on this board who would like to step up. It's been a pleasure serving, but I'm in my 8th year, got 1 year left. So thank you very much. And I'm now going to hold an election for vice chair. Do I hear a nomination of Rick King for vice chair?
I'll nominate Rick Meinken as vice chair.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Are there any additional nominations? I declare nominations closed. There's one nomination. I would like to hear a vote, like to hear a motion to cast one vote for the election of Rick King as vice chair.
So
Jim.
moved.
Jim Hebert is voted. Is there a second?
I second.
It was seconded from Noah Perlet. Doreen, you please call the roll to cast one vote and elect Rick King.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes,
and Noah Perla.
Yes.
thank you very much. Congratulations, Rick.
Don't get sick often.
You know, there's only about one time a year that I miss.
Oh, I know. I got that covered.
Okay. It's October. I can give you the date. Sometime, I forgot, sometime the first, second week of October. We now have two other it's a combination between elections and volunteers. There are two liaisons from the planning board to other committees. One is to the Transportation Committee. That is one that Roger has served on for several years. And one is to the Long Range Planning Committee, and I have been serving on that. So let me ask, is there anybody who would like to volunteer or nominate somebody for the Transportation Committee?
Madam Chair, we're lucky. We have Jennifer Ladd, who is also on that committee and serves as the chair of that committee. And so we're fortunate to have her. And so, Roger has been fully engaged with that committee. So I think it would be a nice streamline efforts for the committee, like the Transportation Committee, if Roger were to agree to serve as the liaison from our board.
Thank you. First of all, Roger, do you accept that? Okay, let me also ask, is there anybody else on this board who would like to serve on the Transportation Committee? It is okay to have an election. Seeing nobody jumping up and down, let us, do I hear a motion to return Roger as the planning board liaison to the Transportation Committee?
Move to return him to the Transportation Committee.
I'll second that if they want him.
I love the camaraderie here. All right, Doreen, please call the roll. The motion is to return Roger to the Transportation Committee.
Rick King,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Henriksen,
Yes,
and Noah Perla.
Yes.
thank you, Roger. I appreciate all the work you've done there. I know you're really workhorse on that committee and this committee as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Long Range Planning Committee. I'm just going to shut up and hear from people.
Aren't you the lead?
I am the current liaison.
Okay, I'll nominate Rachel.
Do you have a desire to return as the liaison?
Are you speaking for them?
No, I'm speaking for me.
Again, I would like to return as liaison for one more year.
Okay, I just wanted to know that.
Anybody else?
Good, now you can.
Again, as a reminder, at some point, because I am term limited here, folks, next year is the time to step up. Do I hear a motion to return Rachel Hendrickson as liaison to the Long Range Planning Committee?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Roger Beely seconded. Doreen, call the roll, please.
Rick King,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
and Noah Perla.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on, staff report.
Not too much to update the board on at this point. In terms of building permits, we did just have a pre-construction for Chiazzo Plumbing at 93 Muzzy Road for their storage building, so that is in the works now. Certificates of occupancy, you may have seen the former Cliffs Building at 370 Route 1, got their CO for the Luna Cafe. And then also notably is the CO for Jocelyn Place, the affordable housing project down Little Walton Drive. So that has been issued as well. One thing we did want to make the board aware of, and I think you've all done this in the last year, is that there is an MMA workshop for ZBA and planning boards held Tuesday, February 13th. If any of you are interested, from 4 to 7:30 PM, it is via Zoom. Again, I think most of you have done it within the last year, but if you're interested, please reach out to Autumn, Doreen, and I, and we can get you signed up.
Eric, real quick, is that the same one I just took like 3 months ago?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
The next meeting of the planning board is February 20th, which will be not on a Monday, it will be a Tuesday, and I believe that's the last meeting that it won't be on on our regularly scheduled Monday, so prepare for that as well. And that's all I have, Madam Chair, unless Autumn has anything else. No.
All right, thank you. Minor development reviews.
Yes, we do have one at 40 Manson Libby Road in the industrial park. The GSA has applied for an office fit out and some change to the parking layout at the rear of the building. We are currently working with them on that. One of the larger issues is they're reducing the overall parking, which the planning board had already initially reduced. So we're going to have them update that plan to show no reduction in parking. So that is not yet approved, but we are currently working with them on that. So that's all we have.
Is that the ICE building?
Right in the corner there.
Yep.
And was that ever developed as an ICE facility?
So this is this is just essentially some internal building modifications to accommodate the tenant. So
It's Customs and Border Patrol. Yeah. All right, correspondence.
none at this time.
None. Planning board comments.
Actually, I have.
Go ahead, Roger.
I just want to mention about the Transportation Committee. I got on this committee about maybe 6 years ago, when the planning board member left. He just moved out of town and, nobody wanted to get on it. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And I have been totally amazed at how much, involvement that committee has in town regarding transportation issues. And I'm amazed that most citizens have no idea that the committee even exists. And we have, we have a little bit of impact on what's going on in town regarding all modes of transportation. It's just astonishing. And it's a very important committee. And, people don't realize how critical it is, especially in this town.
Did you have a full set of hair 6 years ago?
I
when you
did,
got on
I
it?
did,
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. You've been working hard.
Thank you, Roger. Anybody else? All right, I've got a couple of things. The Parks and Conservation Land Board has submitted a request to the town or a notice to the town council that it will be seeking a bond referendum coming hopefully in November. If not this year, then next year. The Land Trust has provided notice to us that there is an increased interest in folks providing land for conservation. Now, they are providing it at market rate. But they're actually approaching the land board, the Land Trust in terms of conservation. And we suspect that given the plan, the comp plan, and the 30 by 30 goal in the comp plan, that we are going to be seeing a lot more applications coming before us. So from a very sleepy committee 8 or 10 years ago, I've been on it 12 years, I think. A very sleepy committee, it is all of a sudden becoming much more active, seeing much more going on in terms of land conservation, and it's going to be a lot busier than it used to be. The Long Range Planning Committee continues plodding through a lot of changes in the ordinances in terms of creating consistency, creating a better flow of the ordinances, amalgamating, assembling them, those things that are related into the same ordinance, rather than trying to dig through 4 different ordinances to put together what we're supposed to do. We've taken a look at landscaping and parking. I unfortunately did not get a maximum parking code, but ordinance, but we can try, keep trying. The next item is on the agenda is going to be siting, and to take a look at how to develop more affordable housing and slightly denser housing in some of our commercial areas. And so that's going to be a challenge. I'm always impressed by the conversations that the members have. Roger, as you talked about the Transportation Committee, I was thinking about what was going on in long-range planning and the amount of detail that the members go through in terms of really creating forward-thinking policies, and especially the quality of the work that Autumn and the planning department brings to us in terms of drafting those policies and helping us to think into the future, not just, what happens tomorrow or the next day, but developing a group of ordinances and planning of construction and growth in Scarborough that really brings us into alignment with the comp plan and sets us up for the next 10 years, and with buildings that are going to be with us and sightings that are going to be with us for the next 40 or 50 years. So there's a lot of work that's going on. It's an excellent committee. Anybody else? All right, hearing nothing, anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Go ahead, Roger. He's motioned out.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Motion to adjourn from Jim Hebert. I hear a second from Noah. Thank you very much, Noah. Hearing no objections, we are adjourned.